Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today a couple people requested this. They just wanted to see how I make my assets in Flip-A-Clip. Alright, I don't use any other program because I just learned how to do it in the Flip-A-Clip app, and that's sort of how I've been doing it. As you can see here, I have just like all the characters I've made and stuff. Yeah. So I'm just gonna make like a walkthrough of like some simple things, and then maybe at the end I'll try and do an advanced one. Anyway, let's get started. So the size for the pen I usually use is around 16 pixels, or 15. I like 16. So first let's just do a red ball. So I like to make the outline a bit darker than the color I want it. So if this is the color of the ball, I would make like the outline a bit darker, like that. And then I'd probably make the outline on layer 3, but I could always select it and move it through the layers. So if you select the ruler tool on the top corner where it has like the copy and the paste and the undo and the redo and the sizing and the dots, you can click that, and then you can choose a straight line, a perfect circle, or a rectangle. You can adjust them to make it a different sort of size. It's sort of really helpful if you want to make an asset with like a ball or like a square or anything. So let's just use that, and boom, we have a perfect circle. Just something that I used to do that I don't do anymore. What I used to do to get the color in the middle, I used to use the paint bucket tool and do that, but I don't do that anymore because there's lots of little white splotches here. They just sort of make the asset look less professional. Anyway, let's get rid of that. And so basically what I would do, I would just select the red color, and then I would make the brush a bit bigger, and then I just sort of fill it in on the layer below. So, you know, I can still sort of do it not like perfect, since it's the layer below, and I don't really have to worry much about things spilling out the sides like this. I usually don't mind at all if this happens, because then afterwards I can just take the eraser tool and erase all of this extra stuff that has came out of the circle. There. So now that we have this, we can take the outline, we can use the selector tool thingy to like bring it around, copy it, delete it, bring it to layer 5, paste it, and then go to layer 3, and this is where you want to decide like what you want it to look like in the shading department. So what I usually do, well, what I do now, this is like the old version of a ball that I made. It's not very good, but this is the new version that I think is a bit better. Because I've noticed that in other more like object shows with more professional assets, they use like multiple like shading layers, I guess. So yeah, I would probably do that. First, I would probably get like the kind of color that's like just a little bit lighter than the original red color, and then I would make it right there. And then I would sort of get this again and line it up and draw that. I think that looks pretty good. And after that, you can sort of like center it a little bit. So like you can center it however you want to do it, just so it looks nicer. I'll put it right there. And now I can fill this color in. Since it's the same color as the outline, I don't really need to worry about putting it on another layer. There, now that I've finished that part, I can just take the selector tool and move that to a more comfortable place and put it right there. Perfect. And if I want to make it just a little bit smaller than that, which I kind of do, just a little bit smaller, not too much. I'm not very experienced at doing these, so if you do see an error, I apologize because I am not professional at this. I just sort of like am winging it, sort of. There, now that's right there. Oh, shoot. There, now that it's right there, we're going to make another layer just like that. So we're going to select the outline again, bring it up to apparently layer 4. I think I might need one more layer after that. Let's just go ahead and bring it up to layer 6 anyway. Perfect. Nice. And now we can go to layer 5 and go back to 16 pixels and make it just a little bit brighter, subtly, but still a difference. Get the circle tool, line it up, and then draw your circle. This one I think I'm going to have to make smaller, definitely. I made it just a bit too big. Now we can select this, make it a bit smaller, so that's what I want to do. And I think I messed up a bit on this. I think I want to make both of these a bit smaller. First we make that one smaller, then we take this one and make this smaller. Because in the end, we get something like this. And, oh, that's bugging me. Just gotta go just a bit closer to the edge there. Perfect. There. And now we have our ball. So there. And now the next asset to show you how I would make is like a square, like a cube. Alright, so the cube is going to be, let's make it green. Don't have many green assets. Lime green. So this, we're going to pick a sort of dark color for the outline. Then we're going to bring this back to 16, because that's the size I like. You could use a totally different size, it doesn't really matter. There, now that we're done with that, we can go ahead and fill this in here. Bring this up and make it lime green. And we would give this an outline. Now that we've got a good center, let's see, we could make this a bit bigger. Sort of fill the rest in. Again, I'm going to caution you against using the paint bucket tool because of the because it leaves a bunch of white marks. And let's go back to when I first made a apples asset. Right here, I tried to fill in some of the white marks, but I didn't really finish that. So yeah, when I made apples asset, I just used the paint bucket tool because that was the easy way out of it. But you can see that if you look closely, it doesn't really look as good. Anyway, back here. So if you want to just make a front-facing cube, I would say probably what I would do. Again, if you want like a professional instruction on how to make this, I suggest you go and watch someone else's video, because this is just sort of explaining how I make my assets. But if you want like a really detailed video explaining like everything, then you should probably go and check out some other video. But if you just want to know how I make them, just stay here. Alright. And so now you want to do the shading. What I would probably do with the shading... Oh, it's not really what I wanted to do. But let's go ahead and bring this right. Actually, first we might want to get rid of the outline on this layer, because this is the shading. And now we can move this over to this side, which will allow us to make a straight line. Now let's see if that looks good. It's a little bit off. Yeah, I think that's probably good. And then I would bring it over here. And then, once I have that, I would just sort of fill it in. Don't really care if I get it outside, so I can just erase that, because I know where the line is. And there we have that. And now, there I have a cube. Ta-da! I don't know how I would go about making like the. I don't think cubes shine. So, this is what I would leave it with. Just a simple square, and then a line right there. Oh. So there, those are two simple assets that I can make. Now, a more complicated asset that's like not an easy shape to make. File was definitely an example of that, because she wasn't really a concrete shape. But what really helped while I was making her was definitely the straight line tool, because that really helped me make the sides and the bottom and this part right here. Whoops. Making this part right here into a straight line. Even this here was still very useful. So yeah, those are just two simple assets that is how I would make them. And if you want to know how I would make like a more complicated asset, leave that in the comments, and yeah. Alright, so in order to make a more complicated asset, I'm not going to do a too complicated one. I'm just going to do, let's say, I don't know, this shape right here. There. This shape. I don't know what it is. It's just sort of like a shape. If you're doing a loose outline, then I would recommend like afterwards like looking at the sides, making sure everything looks good, and like taking your eraser tool and like, whoops, it's a bit too much. Like just sort of touching everything up to make sure it looks smooth. That's what I'm doing right now. Yep, too close. There. And now that we're here, we can sort of fill this in with something lighter. Like this. Well, let's say we want to make it transparent. Let's just do that then. Sort of like a highlighter. And I can just do that. And now I can go through the edges and erase all this extra stuff. There. So now we have this transparent blob of stuff. And now over here, if we go to layer 2, we can do the shading bit. Well, I would just go ahead and use white, or like very light yellow for the shading. Just like white. Actually, I'd probably use white, since it is transparent anyway. I'll just make it a little less transparent. And then we can bring this back to a smaller size when we make our shine, sort of. And the shine should be only on like things that would shine, like water if you want to make something watery, or like I use that on like the butter on pancake, sort of stuff like that. Sort of an interesting blob of liquid. And then the other kind of shading you could do is like darker shading than the color. So like if you want to make it darker than yellow, I lost that color. You can like make it a little bit darker than that, like that. Or you could just make it less transparent, like that, because that would be completely dark. But we're not going to make it completely non-transparent. We'll just make it like that. So, oh, never mind. That looks exactly the same. We will have to make it a bit darker. Get a bit darker than that. Like that. Perfect. Now I usually like to do the shading on like one of the corners. Like, I usually like using the bottom right. Because if I do it slower, it gets a bit shaky. But it's actually fine because I can just touch it up like this. There, and that's sort of like how to make the shading. But in this specific thing, I don't think I would want the shading, because it's just more of like a light blob. So yeah, that is how I would sort of make a more complicated shape. It has the same idea, but it's just not really using the tools. So yeah, those are 3 assets and that is how I would go about making them. Alright, hope you enjoyed this video. Bye-bye.